everyone. Welcome to USA Today. I want to extend the warmest welcome to the USA Today's headquarters. My name is Jenny Huang, and I'm the Director of B2B Brand Marketing at Gannett USA Today Network. And I'm very excited for today's event, which is focusing on luxury and retail. And we have amazing speakers, amazing panel lining up. Let me introduce the panels today. Pass the mic to Jason Taylor, our moderator and the Chief Sales Officer of Gannett. I'll leave it to him.
Oh, thank you. Everybody, if you could just give an extra round of applause to Jenny. She has done an incredible job pulling this together. I want to also welcome you to USA Today. I guess I'll start by saying it's an interesting time to be in the journalism business. It's an interesting time to be in the audience business. And today we're going to talk about it's an interesting time to be a marketer. So a lot going on. We're excited to have you here in our New York headquarters. Just a little bit about, just a reminder of us, because I think it's an interesting perspective when we're all together. We are now, and have been, a big year for us. We became the most visited website in North America for news and information. So an incredible moment for us. We have held that now for, I believe, 16 months, ahead of NBC, CNN, ABC, Fox. So a really big time. So we feel like what makes this an interesting time for us to host this panel is we watch so closely retail spend across the country. We watch consumer behavior across the country. We think we provide a very unique insight to what we call the movable middle. We have well over 250 markets in the United States, ranging from Des Moines, Iowa, to Austin, Texas, to West Palm Beach, Florida. So that gives us a unique perspective, as does our over 1.3 billion views to USA Today each and every month. So we love to watch consumer behavior. And today, we just know it's such an interesting time to see what consumers are up to. Consumers are telling us, the stock market is telling us, experiences matter more than ever. Brand loyalty, brand interaction matters more than ever. You all know this, but let's talk to the experts about it. Before we get started, I would like for each starting, if we could, down at the end, Carlos, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background and the brand.
Sure, absolutely. Very happy to be here. My name is Carlos Cepeda. I am with Moet Hennessy, and I lead strategy and marketing capability. I grew up in Mexico, and then came to pursue a master's degree in Northwestern, and then 26 years later, I've been in consulting, I've been in CPG, and I've been 10 years with Moet. So very happy to join the panel.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Kerr. I lead brand and marketing for the Ritz-Carlton. I'm originally from Ohio. We discovered that we grew up very close to one another. I went through New York City, and I've been in DC for a little over 22 years. My career has sort of spanned everything from fashion. I spent a lot of time with agencies, big agencies, small agencies, global ones as well. And I would say I probably landed in this sort of luxury and hospitality niche. And so I've been focused on really the Ritz-Carlton and luxury for almost 20 years. So excited to be here and share a little bit with everyone.
Well, good evening. It's wonderful to see everyone tonight. Thank you all for making the time to come have this chat. My name is Caroline Gardner. I lead brand marketing and experience for The Real Real. We are a luxury re-commerce website. My career started in sort of the way every post-MBA career seems to start, consulting. And so I did the marketing strategy, brand strategy, consulting work, made my way into luxury because I realized that what I was so passionate about was brands that everybody wanted to tell their friends about, right? That did something to you that made you so excited that you had to go tell your friend. Like, oh my God, did you know about this? Have you heard about that? Did you see this? And that's really guided my career. That was the clients I worked with in consulting. That was what took me with Jamie to the Ritz-Carlton, and then led me to the Real World today. So wherever I go, that'll probably be where you'll find me.
Hi, my name is Karina Adel. I'm the CMO of Buchra USA, formerly known as Tourneau. We are in the final stages of a major rebrand. I got into luxury because I was always passionate about product, art, and management, and then landed in marketing. I've been with Swarovski for almost a decade back in Austria, but also globally, including Shanghai, Paris, and then did an MBA at Stanford and stayed in the United States. Also had a brief stint in private equity, and then because of the transition from Chernow to Buchra, I landed with Buchra USA, and I've been there for almost 6 years.
So what do you think about this panel, ladies and gentlemen? Pretty interesting. So I'd love to start with you, Karina, if we could. You know, what I mentioned early in the introduction was the idea of how the consumer is telling us experience and loyalty to a brand matters. How do you, that brand experience, how do you see, and each of you, if you could answer, but starting with you, how do you see your brand responding to this very vocal, engaged consumer now?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think just for anyone, like we sell luxury watches and really high-end jewelry pieces. We have a big flagship on 57th Street, which was completely refurbished 5 years ago. And with exactly that thought in mind, what is that experience component like? How do we want to treat anyone who comes into the store? And we actually took a lot of notes, actually a lot of notes from hospitality and especially from the Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen. So we really want to welcome you. We want to invite you to stay with us, to have a drink at the bar, to have a coffee with us, and then introduce you to the brands, show you what you're interested in, what you even maybe didn't even know that you're interested in. But that part of hospitality in retail is absolutely key.
Interesting. Same question.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm happy to take that. I think the funny thing about joining a brand like The Real Real, especially coming from an icon like the Ritz-Carlton, part of what excited me about The Real Real is that it actually really strives to be the next luxury icon. And if you think about what's changing about today's consumer, they are fluent in both physical and digital experiences. They are all about accessibility and intelligence in how you shop and how you manage yourself, right? About personalization, right? They don't necessarily want just whatever the runway is going to tell them that they have to wear that season. They want to decide for themselves what they look like, what's unique to them, what's their journey, how do they want to self-express that day. And so a lot about designing the experience for The Real Real is about meeting that individual where they are and helping them have this unique experience with our brand that helps them be their best self in whatever moment looks like for them.
So Caroline talked about wanting to be the next icon, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about how does a legacy brand like Ritz-Carlton, it's 127 years old, right? How do you stay relevant? And I think there's, a couple principles. We talk about ourselves as an icon that never rests, right? We have to continue to be relevant kind of across what we're doing from marketing, what the guest experience looks like. And, we are a brand that's built on genuine care. And so number one, that is one thing that will never change in what we do from a service delivery. But the expectations, I think, are, so heightened compared to where they were. And I talked about really falling in love with this brand 20 years ago. We talked about experiences then. We were sort of the first hospitality brand to take it from the pool, the spa, to what will stay with you, right? And it is that experience. And we think about, where that consumer was then when they were collecting stories for social currency to now. These consumers are so confident regardless of sort of what age group you're in. They know who they are. They want experiences that are consistent. They expect that across our portfolio. We're 111 hotels, so we have to be consistent. That is really job number one. But I think it's how do you create, these experiences that resonate, right? Whether you're 26 and traveling with us for the first time on business, or you're 45 and you're taking your family on a very special trip. It's constantly thinking about how do we innovate? How do we deliver on service? And then, how do we also start to meet that next gen? And we'll talk probably a little bit more about that and kind of what we've done to kind of bridge, I think, the relevancy as we think about this up and coming generation.
guess it's my turn. So interestingly, I'm on the other side because we actually don't have the premise, right? I don't have the stores. I don't have the .com. I don't have the room, the spa, all that stuff. So when we look at experiences, we almost have to deconstruct the way to connect with the consumer. So there are places where the consumer is that we need to find our way to meet them where they are, right? And a lot of it right now is about day experiences, festivals, even the behavior on dining, like the toughest reservation to get is 6 p.m. these days, right? Because everything had kind of moved up towards the day, right? That also drives the kind of experiences, that we do. So meet them where they are. The second thing is that consumers, they're so educated, they have so much information, they're all about creative expression. So they don't want you to do the experience for them. They want to do the experience themselves. So we need to deconstruct ourselves again to say, how can we be part of the mural, right, of sensorial experiences, tactile experiences, whether it is the packaging, the stories on the bottle, the value-added packs, the swag of the brand that can be talked about in your party. So I think that's the second way. And then the third one is to create these flagship experiences that are highly curated and that they have so much value that consumers will pay for it. They could be winemaker dinners that include tastings. They could be, things like the Polo Classic that we've done in Hollywood and that we've done here that are highly curated, highly flagship. But I think for us, the challenge is, since we don't own the last mile, how do we envision the engagement? Which I think it's not easy. And sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we believe that's what the consumer wants, and then we realize they don't. But I feel that it's this mindset of deconstructing the experience and also not to present a finished experience, but to allow the consumer to complete it.
Very interesting. And just out of curiosity to tag along there, 1 to 10, just quickly, 10 being the most, 1 being not. How important is social media to driving that story of the experience for each of you? Is it as imperative across all luxury brands or some more than others?
Not as important as you might think.
Okay.
In our case.
Okay.
Like, it's important to create awareness, but we also believe like in the privacy aspect. So I think the client, they want a unique and catered to experience, and they don't want it to be posted on social media because then it kind of removes that luxury, that like special effect, basically.
Makes sense.
I think, inherently what strikes me is every single one of our brands are enablers, right? We are enabling our consumer to do something, whatever that might be. And when I think of social, I think it depends on how you define social. So there are certain instances where social and social virality are very beneficial to, especially a fashion brand. But then, very similarly, we have a certain set of customers that don't ever want to appear on social, don't want to be a part of the social. And actually for them, the social network is their text messaging with close friends, right? Or a closed circle on a certain platform. And that's still an inherently social behavior, right? I'm still inherently trying to enable you to do something or enable you to talk about me. But the platform and the scale of that may change from virality to the close and the comfortable.
I mean, I would say in the world of travel, right, it is, social media is incredibly important. And I think it's about, starting the right conversation. So for instance, about a year and a half ago, we had a debate, do we get involved in TikTok? Is that where luxury brands should be? Obviously, there's a lot in the fashion space that are there. And we realized, yes, and we happen to have the most content created about us compared to other luxury brands. We already had consumers telling our story. So I think as long as you don't sort of disable that authenticity in storytelling and really, looking to that as sort of, leverage as you think about creating brand differentiation. And I think to your point with watches, right, the one thing about the Ritz-Carlton is there's such trust in the brand that we're inherently not going after celebrities or talking about who's staying at our properties. Like, that privacy is incredibly important to us. So that isn't ever a tactic that you'd see us take.
I think for us, it's definitely important, but it's evolving. I think that there is a certain utility factor of social media that could be entertainment, entertain me, educate me, or make me smarter, right? And I feel that mindset resonates with the consumer versus the good old, just, like very narcissistic brand behavior of your brand, the package, the pack, the bottle. Like. So I think having this utility mindset, keeps the relevance, going. And I feel that, at the end of the day, most of the social content you want to come from consumers versus from you.
Yeah, makes sense. So starting with you, Jamie, could you switch gears a little bit? Sustainability, so important now. How is it shaping your strategies? And all of you, I would love. But Jamie, starting with you, sustainability. It's not just a trend anymore. It's an expectation.
So what's so interesting about, I think, the Ritz-Carlton, as we think about sustainability and sort of social responsibility, we actually have had a platform for 42 years called the Ritz-Carlton Community Footprints. And when we think about the power of this brand, it's what we're doing in the communities and where we build. It is giving back. I just saw sort of the latest stat. I think it's $34 million we've donated, over 1,000 service hours by hotel. And I think there's some power in that story. It's one that we haven't told. It's certainly very important to, our associates. And I think we've realized there's space for us. Like, when we start to tell that story, it has been an incredible way for us to engage even with the Mercedes-AMG F1 team. So the drivers, as we think about creating content with someone like Lewis Hamilton, he's like, I want to help participate in what you authentically do. So I think the balance for us is, number one, how do we tell those stories so they come across as very genuine, right? And not something that we just started to do in the last couple of years. How do we give those opportunities to our guests? I think 15 years ago we said, hey, it's great. We have meaningful meetings. If you want to book, business with us, this is an option. And we had very few take it. Now we have guests actively wanting to engage. How can I give back? What does it look like, what you're doing with the local school? So I would say for us, we're really probably, yes, sustainability as we think about, our footprint and what we're doing in terms of, operational excellence. But I would say it's really that community story that's really important for us to tell.
Interesting. Carlos.
So, speaking of community, everything we do comes from nature, right? The grapes in cognac, the grapes in Champagne, the agaves in Mexico, the rye in Poland. Everything comes from nature. So, our commitment is to that, firstly, to that community and to that soil. We have a initiative called Living Soils, which we're trying to make sure that, that we take care of the soil where we get the main ingredient, right? And also like the entire biodiversity of the ecosystem, that could involve bees, that could involve, the flora around the soil, et cetera, which it's all connected, right? Now, I don't think we tell those stories in a very frontal way. I think we have them there for discovery. I think that consumers expect you to do that. So I think the challenge that any brand could face is, to what extent do you pound the chest or brag about it, or do you just leave it so that when consumers discover it, they're like, you know what, I like you're doing that. That's what you should be doing, right? So I think there's a fine tension between doing it and telling you're doing it.
I think we are not a manufacturer, right? So for us, it's basically, to Carlos's point, it's like it's a given in a way. So we manufacture jewelry, and there obviously you have a lot of like standards, codes, sustainability efforts, and to your point, this is where you just you meet them and you exceed them, and you don't really talk about it because that's kind of the expectation. And then apart from that, it's more, I want to reframe it a little bit to authenticity. We sell like authentic brands. We sell brands that are made, like these watches are made by hand in Switzerland. So, and all of these brands have a story in themselves, have a strong brand, have strong authenticity. So that's kind of what is already part of the sustainability story.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the premise. Sustainability is the premise on which The Real World is founded, right? That we believe luxury goods can live many lives because they're of high quality, they're beautifully constructed, there's incredible craftsmanship. And if you think about the challenges in the world in terms of sustainability, every second 2,000 clothing items end up in a landfill. There's enough clothing on this planet right now for 6 generations of people. Think about that, 6 generations. And so when you think about sustainability, that's who we are. And in fact, I would sort of push a little bit at the boundaries of how we think about fashion, because resale is the only way fashion is going to be sustainable when you think about those 2 stats. And so it's really core to everything we do. And in fact, is one of the things that we call our truths, that we hold dear, the sense of sustainability and its importance in the world.
Oh, fascinating. So if we could, again, switch gears again, I would love to, in today's world, in the balance of luxury brands, there's accessibility, but then there's exclusivity. How do you strike that balance, right? Some brands can let it go too far one way or the other. How do you find that balance? How do you strike it? Carla?
I think you obviously, there is a certain exclusivity, right? And we also always talk, I'm usually, not that I like to talk about it, but it's always a question that comes up is about demand and supply. Because we have these pieces that are uniquely done, there is more demand than supply, and that generates exclusivity. But that doesn't mean that it's not accessible. So I think it's really important that when you start your journey with us, that you get introduced to a bunch of brands and you just like look at what you really like, and also you're buying into a product that is usually for life. So it's kind of sustainable by definition in a way. And then you continue the journey, and then you get also access to maybe more exclusive products, which again, we're not trying to make them exclusive. It's just the way the manufacturing works in that case.
Makes sense.
It should probably surprise no one that, to your point, in fact, one of my favorite campaigns ever run was by Patek Philippe, where they said you don't own a watch, you just steward it for the next generation. And we like to think that next generation doesn't have to be your family member. It can be someone else's. But I think, at the end of the day, actually one of the other core principles upon which The Real World is founded is accessibility. And we believe that race, creed, color, none of that should matter in how you choose to buy luxury. You can walk into a Real World store now and get the most coveted bag in the world immediately. You don't have to wait on a list. You don't have to wait. Typically, you don't even have to wait at the door unless it's a Saturday in Soho. But, I think for the most part, luxury, what makes luxury special is the quality and the craftsmanship and the thoughtfulness of the design, and how it makes you feel. It shouldn't be about a list, right? It shouldn't be about a gatekeeping mechanism necessarily. And I think that perception of luxury is maybe getting a little outdated compared to what's happening in the world, right? If you think about it, I think we see luxury about celebrating with your friends, about being happy in who you are, about being able to express yourself naturally, and we want to support that. Whether you choose to do that with a $60,000 handbag or a $6 handbag is whatever makes you feel great is what The Real World would want to support.
So taking that into hospitality, Jamie, how do you balance that?
It's interesting because I feel like there was such a formality with luxury hotels, and I think that's really changed, right? It is really, the Ritz-Carlton is built on this, again, the principle of genuine care and welcoming all, right? Whether you're an associate of ours, whether you are a guest, I think you will be treated the same, right? If you come in and you just want to explore the lobby, whether it's at Central Park or Nomad here, you will be welcomed in. You will be asked, how can I help you? You will feel like you belong there, right? And so I think as long as we live sort of that principle that we're not so exclusive that we're only for a few, right? And we certainly know we have products that do feel very exclusive, like Ritz-Carlton Reserve, which is kind of our ultra luxury offering, or we just announced our first safari today and Masai Mara. And I think there is some exclusivity there, but I feel like that's sort of aspirational, right? That's the dream. And I think it's about, again, welcoming all and then kind of finding those pieces where we're, able to give merchandise, right? We think about like some of the collaborations and kind of where fashion and travel, meet, and kind of, wearing a piece of the Ritz-Carlton, I think, could also play very well into, many, many generations and those that hopefully aspire to go on that safari with us.
Well, you had me at Safari, but Carlos?
Yeah, well, me too. I'm like, let's stay connected.
I'm about to Google.
Yeah, no,
Someone
I'm
bring me
definitely
my
link
phone.
her in right now. So, no, by the way, her former, was Chris your boss or no?
Yes.
Yeah, so her former boss is my boss now. So, and he is great. Okay, so.
Only say good things.
Yes. No, listen, I think it's an interesting thing. I think that consumers want a richer life. I mean, who doesn't want to have more money? Let's keep it real. But the whole quest for richer life, meaningful life, particularly post-pandemic, I think hit probably all of our chords. And so I think that is at the front of the mindset, where authenticity, what you're mentioning, craft, it's sometimes probably more important than the bragging factor that we had, for many years, right? And so I think that to me it's part of the mindset. Now, and I think consumers want both. I think consumers want to be both inspired and aspire to something, but they don't want stiff. They want brands to be approachable. They want brands to be welcoming, to be inclusive, so I think consumers want it all. And I feel that before we were a bit in a more binary mindset of we're gonna be this or we're not. We cannot be approachable and high end. No, we actually can. We cannot be couture and streetwear. Oh yeah, we can. As Pharrell, right? So like it's I think those lines are blurring in a lot of industries, but I think it also requires a different behavior from the brands and a different behavior from the people that are running the brands on the experiences, the engagement journeys, the asset we create. It permeates everything.
Speaking of those journeys and speaking of all the change happening in the world, AI, we have to talk about AI. How's it transforming your business? Start with you, Carlos. What
I knew you were going to call me. I was hoping
Everyone wants to ask, so yeah.
So listen, I'm going to keep it real here. I think there's more that we don't know than what we know. We have been focusing a little bit more on some of the back end things, like for example, on predictive models for supply that allow us to be more efficient and smarter on the entire supply chain. There's also things that we've done to help us select the best grapes from the crop that actually our maisons are doing in Champagne, using AI to detect and almost like select the goodies or identify the not so goodies. And then from a marketing standpoint, there's a big tension with the craft, because even assets are highly curated. There's a big production for every asset, and so I think we are in that journey of what part can we explore this multiplicity of perspectives, multiplicity of creation. I think we're still dealing with that, but to me, probably the most important thing is how is AI changing the way we work and the way we think and the way we create, right? This idea of companionship on everything you do, it's just a fascinating, shift, right? That you actually ask your favorite tool, could be a visual tool, could be just Claude, or could be whatever, to give you perspective on a concept, on a pitch, on a white paper for a experience you're trying to make. I think that, to me, from a behavioral standpoint, it's probably the most fascinating, because it's happening in schools with little kids, and it's happening in corporate, right? And so I think there's a bit of stigma on, did you do it? Well, it's like, which at the end, I think we want the best output, integrity at the front, for sure. But to me, is this notion of multiplicity of perspectives that we are embracing through the AI tools.
Okay, wow, it's hard to follow that.
I made it up. So.
AI told you. I would say, sort of have three thoughts as relates to hospitality. And I think, Carlos, to your point, there's so much opportunity for predictive modeling to look at available rooms and to help with some of those back-end strategies. I think that is, where we're probably seeing, probably the most traction right now. Marriott as a company is definitely investing, $1 billion sort of into this space. And I think we're even seeing year over year with some research we just did that sort of, especially this younger consumer, like 26% last year said, oh, I used AI to plan a trip. Now that was almost 40%. And so I think there's some opportunity there as we think about like the itineraries we serve up and the content. I think where the friction sort of lies is when we think about our travel advisor community. So believe it or not, travel advisors are our biggest advocates. There's still significant amount of business that is booked through travel advisors where you have that one-on-one relationship. And they're talking about, they have a lot of clients that come and say, I built this on AI. And it isn't quite tailored to what actually probably would fit the trip purpose. So I think there's this tension there. And I think, sort of the second point with hospitality and probably where we are the most behind is where is it that companion, like you talked about, to sort of that human interaction. And I feel like there's also this tension with people wanting to put devices down, really just wanting to engage with the human throughout their entire journey. And sometimes you don't want that. So I think that's the opportunity. I don't think we're there yet as a brand. But I think where we've had a little bit of fun kind of playing with AI is in marketing. And it's more around content and what we're creating. It's interesting because I think there's a fine line between fantasy and reality, especially when you want to show the real experience. And you think about even what influencers create. And sometimes we'll say, oh, that's a little too far, for us. But creating things that are more fantasy-like and a little more abstract has worked for us. But I still think we've had the human touch in terms of our creative saying, this is what AI kind of did when we tried this, but now we've needed to fine-tune it. And it's interesting, that type of content probably plays less well on social, but we've seen more of that fantasy content that AI has helped to sort of perform much better in more traditional paid digital, print. So I think there's some opportunity there, and that's probably the piece that I'm most interested in is, yes, the predictive modeling and kind of where we can be more efficient, but it's also like the creative expression that AI can help inform.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Jamie said in terms of AI's opportunity for efficiency and content creation. And I actually think a great test is how many people in this room use ChatGPT today. Look at that. Like a month ago, it probably would not have been as high. And think about how rapidly that's going to change. So AI is just going to be increasingly a part of our daily lives. We all need to be thinking about that from a search perspective. What's the future of search? If you're looking up, I want to go on a Ritz-Carlton trip, right? So I think from the stage is set. We just don't know how it's going to play out in terms of AI. And I think we don't even know what we don't know yet. I think the other thing about AI that I would really call out is just from a culture perspective. I think it will make all of us, or really will highlight for all of us, how much more important authenticity is. Because in a world where everything is algorithmically generated, a person and an independent thought become all the more luxurious. And so I think at the end of the day, that's something that we're going to have to continue to pay attention. In our business, that's probably the most prescient because we really pride ourselves on our authenticity guarantee and the amount of data and expertise that goes into authenticating every single item we sell. And so we see right now competitors using AI to provide an authenticity guarantee that is very easy for smart creators of inauthentic goods to pass through. And so when you see the sort of downside of AI, I think you realize what's going to happen culturally is also going to be true, that authenticity will start to become really critical.
I honestly have not that much to add. I feel like exactly what you said is it gives the meaning of luxury like a new definition, because that really means the more you go into AI, VR, pure luxury for me is that personal experience, that one-on-one, that direct relationship with the client, that really sitting down together, having like events where you invite them to, having that interaction, like the analog experience becomes so much more important in all these discussions that we are having.
If I may, I think in the spectrum of human and machine, there is a parallel spectrum of utility versus connectivity, and I feel at times consumers, you want utility. Damn it, I want to change the reservation now, quick, help me. Don't send me to either have a bot that does that efficiently, or put me in touch with somebody on chat so I can text and I can get it done. But I think that, so there's moments for utility and there's moments for connectivity. And I think the challenge we have is to try to figure those out and be prepared to deliver on that. But I always talk about utility because, in a fancy world, it's like, really? No, but we place a lot of value on utility because it makes our life easier. You don't want to waste time. But there's things that you actually do want to talk to somebody. You want to feel the love. You want to feel the humanity of the brand. And then there's parts that you said, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get it done.
And I think that that's so right, Carlos, especially when you think about the customer journey. How are you mapping those moments into your journey? Because if you're not anticipating those need states in the journey mapping, then you're going to miss the mark every time.
I think, just to tag on to that, we have such an interesting perspective because we have over 400,000 active advertisers at any given point, right? And when you look at those across the country, our advertisers, whether they're luxury, whether they're frontline, small mom and pop shops, sometimes we're generating more leads for them than they can handle. And they're not answering the phones. They're not, and it's been, so we are trying to help solve that with AI for our customers, our advertising clients. So it's interesting that we see it even in the smallest mom and pop shops in Kansas City, Missouri. It's really interesting to watch. What, besides AI, is there any 1-2 things that is on the horizon for luxury technology that just gets you excited? Caroline, start with you. Anything?
Personally, I think digital health is gonna unlock. I don't know how many people in this room have an Aura ring on their finger, but I'm willing to guess a lot of them. And I think it's unreal. And so I think, the ultimate luxury is your life, right? The moments you spend on this planet, like that's what we all are here to optimize. And so if you think about the products that are going to give us insights on how to increase that or enhance that or make us that best version of ourselves, I really think that is a forefront that we have not even started to scratch the surface on.
Carlos, anything really exciting you?
I think the intersection of categories that is happening, like you go from fashion brands opening restaurants or hotels to hotels opening homeware.
Good point.
So I think the adjacency, how far can you take your ethos? It's a fascinating journey, because sometimes you might actually believe that's what you can translate it there, and consumers might be like, yeah, but no, thank you, right? Yeah. So, but I think that to me it's a fascinating, just from a growth perspective, where growth is going to come from. We're all challenged with the consumer behaviors, right? And so I feel that's why this this adjacency has both a growth component from a business standpoint, but it also magnifies what you stand for, right? And so I think homeware and home collections, it's going to continue to be more important. And I feel there is ways sensorially that you can be part of that. There are different ways that you can kind of like crash that opportunity. And then on the hospitality side, I mean, a lot of people are trying to build hotels, and not everybody will be successful because it is a complete different business, as you know better than I do.
So if you don't mind, I'll go next. I'm going to build off what both of you talked about. I think, Caroline, to your point, with people wanting to be their best selves, we think about that all the time. When they step into our hotel, how do we enable that? And we're spending a lot of time thinking about, okay, we are the largest luxury spa operator globally, but what does that mean? Where do we need to push? It's this idea of longevity, I think, is really important. It's not necessarily, surgical procedures. I think we'll leave that to the experts, but there's something there that I think, we have an opportunity to unlock as we think about, just living a more full life and a healthier life. And I think, to your point with, collaborations, it's like, how far can you stretch a brand and how far should you stretch a brand, right? For Ritz-Carlton, yes, we could talk about getting into maybe service extensions. Is that the right thing to do, right? We kind of took maybe a more of a calculated risk and got a little bit more into the fashion space and sort of reinterpreted brand that way. I think this idea of kind of bringing brands home, it's finding that sort of sweet spot. What is the role of that brand kind of beyond, the product or the physical space in terms of a hotel? So I think that, and how do you make the mark and culture, right? We talked a lot about that kind of before the panel, with the Super Bowl, but where's the intersection with culture that is authentic and relevant and doesn't feel too forced, right? Because I think particularly fashion brands have a lot of permission to kind of push there. Hospitality, maybe a little less so, but I think it's, that relevancy with culture is also going to be something to watch, I think, this year and next year.
Carlina?
I think what I'm always thinking about is like, what is that next experience? Like, what is that next level of experience that people are really excited about that they don't have? Because it's no longer about accessibility. People get so much accessibility. There's so much already out there. Like, what is that next level? How can we also build a brand further and have it still feel authentic and purposeful, but kind of remove the boundaries of what it is today? And then personally, I really love what you said, that personal health, longevity. There's such an interesting space. I totally agree.
This has been a really fascinating conversation. I want to get to Q&A, but I'm going to put you on the spot and ask each of you to give one sentence of advice to people who are trying to navigate in the marketing of a luxury brand, or look to a career, look to growth and luxury brand marketing. Like, what piece of advice? If I could get you to condense it to one sentence, then we'll go to some quick Q&A. Carlina, can I start with you?
I think just
No pressure.
I think it's find, for me, something I always talk about, because people come and they're like, I want this job. I want to find the right culture and find the right brand you believe in and the people that you work with, because that's where you spend most of your time. So you want to make sure you are in the right environment, in the right culture, and you work with products that you're actually really passionate about, because that will take you where you want to be.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think one sentence. Gosh, come on. This is
Sorry.
tough.
He did say one sentence.
Run on. It can be a run on.
Okay, I'll make it a run on. I do think finding a brand that you're truly passionate about, because again, a lot of what goes into luxury brands is passion, right? Ultimately, the people making those products are passionate about them. And if you're their marketer, you have to share the passion for their work and what your company is doing. And I think, even in my case, where we don't manufacture anything, right? I'm a reseller, but I'm so passionate about the products that we created and our consigners who choose to sell them with us. and how that creates a more sustainable future for fashion. I get really excited every day to go to work, but I really would agree that it's also about the people you work with. Do they make you the best and we keep saying this sentence, but do they make you the best version of yourself? Do they want to challenge you to grow? Are they going to give you the permission to learn and grow there? And are they going to become those lifelong friends? Jamie and I have worked together for a very long time. I can't even do the math while I'm sitting here. That was a run-on right there. But anyway, I think, that matters in the luxury world. Luxury marketing is a very, very small place. Chris Gabaldon was also my boss that they mentioned. And
He's
so...
doing something right.
See, it's a good crew right here. But I think we'll get you in, don't worry. But you probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that. But what I would say is it's a small place, and so you want to build relationships with people the same way that those brands are building relationships with their customers. So I don't know, longest run on ever. No, total fail, guys.
You're good. Jamie?
Okay, it's hard to follow that. I will say it's culture and people, and I think many of you know it. You will leave a job because of the culture or because you're not supported by the team. I think this idea of being passionate about what you do, right? It doesn't have, like, you're not the consumer, but to love the brand and want to tell that brand story and, think about what's next is sort of what drives me every day. But you heard me in the beginning when I talked about my career. Did a little bit of fashion. I did a lot of other brands. I touched banking. I touched, tourism, a lot, healthcare. And then I sort of found my sweet spot. I knew what I loved to do. And I would say, don't just immediately say no. If you're like, oh, I don't know much about this brand or this company, try it. Go experience. If it gives you, I think, sort of that next leverage to say, I've gained new experience. Now it's next, my next jump is to find that brand that I'm passionate about. So don't close doors so quickly, but you'll know when you open the right one.
I love it. You should just drop the mic. But no, listen, just building on that, I really believe in this notion of having multiple versions of yourself versus just one. Because if you have one version, everything that doesn't look like that, you're going to be like, no, thank you. And you actually could be ignoring. So if you have multiple versions of yourself of like a job that is very, brand calm, good old, a lot of aesthetic marketing, great. Analytical version of yourself, GM version of yourself, small company version of yourself, global version of yourself, that will make you say yes more than if you just have one. And I think with the culture and being proud of that, I think, that's put. But I think forcing yourself, because it's very easy to have one archetype of yourself that you make this like version of like, this is me. But I think have this multiplicity will just expand the option. And then you're like, actually, I might actually give it a shot. I might actually join that. Why not? I think I can do it. And that might open, and as you said, you might learn something. And there might be, you might go back. Actors typically have one genre that they favor the most, but they give the chance to do multiple. And sometimes some of the best performances are in genres that are not their core. And that could happen to any of us.
All four of you, such great advice, great advice. Let's give them a round of applause. We do have just a couple moments for questions. Are there any questions for anybody on the panel? Yes.
I want to talk about AI and authenticity, but I'm wondering for each of your individual industries, what you would say is kind of the biggest challenge you're facing as we go into 2025. I know it's a big question.
Just that? Yeah, no.
And I'll take this one, and I'm going to take it more like from a pure marketing lens. I think our ongoing challenge is, where do we spend the money, right? Is it partnerships? Is it doing our content strategy? Is it doubling down in certain aspects of paid? Which part of the funnel are we going to focus on? And I think for most luxury brands, right, you're not like every year your business doesn't dramatically change. Sometimes it can, but you're kind of planning long term. But those decisions, even though they could feel trivial at times, like those sometimes are the biggest things to wrestle with. And I think particularly like my challenge is, where do I go from partnerships? What's next? Do we need a new partner every year? where am I able to sort of, create some longevity? And I'd say it's that sort of balance of partnerships versus where I'm going to put my paid spend.
I think understanding consumer beyond your category, like we love to say that's my consumer, actually he's not your consumer. He just chooses to have you for a given, purpose. So I think understanding the repertoires within your category and beyond could give us, a perspective on how to engage, how to connect, because it's getting just tougher, how to break through, like how to actually be able to drive relevance to your point. And in the end, it becomes where do you put the investment? And we're definitely not getting less pressure from the top, on efficiency.
I think I would say growth, right? So for the real, we have a growth playbook that we are seeing work really well. We're going to continue to drive that. But how does that growth play out in terms of cultural anticipation? So like there's a part of your budget that's just pure play media spend, right? Like we all have that spend. But there's also a part of your budget that you can experiment with and you can sort of test things with and you can sort of play with and evolve with. And that's where your growth is going to come from. But there's like 50 things to test growth on right now, at least in my world. I'm sure you're all seeing the same thing. And so it's sort of this, I jokingly said to one of my members of my team earlier today, I was like, it's like I just walked into Haagen-Dazs and there's Baskin Robbins, and there's 31 flavors, right? It's like, which flavor are we gonna choose today? And I think, our focus is going to be different than what another brand's is, but you have to figure out what is that algorithm of testing for your brand and like where do those placements that matter, where are they going to come from? Because the media landscape is just changing so quickly and it's definitely not getting any cheaper.
To that point,
Sorry
it's
about
like
that.
an
Yeah,
ever rapid changing environment, and you're so prone to all the macro and microeconomics. So for me, it's always still navigating change and also navigating your team through change and helping your team to stay focused, ask the right questions, stay on track. I feel like that's really also like a key challenge and opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. So we probably have time for about one more question. Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Darren also. I just want to say I work for Gannett. I work with Jason. I just want to say thank you for coming here, being here today. My question kind of ties a little bit to accessibility and reaching an audience. I'm a marketer too. I kind of, look at these things, demographics. Luxury brands have historically kind of been, targeting an older audience. And with this changing world, that's not necessarily true anymore. And a younger audience, a younger demographic is also very relevant. So how do you see that, shift to a younger demographic with how you change your marketing efforts?
I can take that one. Actually, less than 50% or more than 50% of our customers are millennials or Gen Z. Wow. So I actually would really contest that the luxury buyer is purely older. I think that's very not true anymore. I think that philosophy is pervasive. And so a lot of times media spend follows that philosophy, but it's not actually necessarily showing up in a lot of the demographics, at least that we're seeing. And I say that with pure play luxury. I'm not even talking about accessible price points on our site. So I think just totalistically, but I think to your point, that's what's making marketing so expensive because there's so many differences. It's not just one demographic I'm chasing anymore, right? It's multiple demographics in multiple places doing different things. And you have to think about how to make your media cover all of these bases. And so that's what's making it hard. That's what's great. Like I love to see that. And it keeps me up at night. And I wish everybody would just read one thing so I could just buy a lot of media there, right? But that's where it does mean, I think, the key to unlocking that is really thinking about how do you make your brand relevant in different cultural pockets in the ways that are relevant for that particular sort of sub-demographic that you might be trying to reach.
Curious how that applies. It was an interesting question. How does that apply to hospitality? Like what percentage of your guessed would be millennial Gen Z.
So I think that the TikTok example I gave sort of said, right, we know that we're a brand that has relevance sort of beyond that older demographic. And interestingly, our kind of, I'd say our actual guest makeup has changed significantly. So we were about an average of 52 years old 10 years ago. The average is now like 41, 42. Wow. And so when we think about, content, I think we always have sort of next gen in mind. We'll never do anything that feels inauthentic or pandering. But I think that cultural piece has allowed us to say, how do we take, F1, which is blown up, since we started the partnership in 2018, and how do we use that to kind of reach this younger audience? We know that's the biggest consumer of kind of F1 content and Mercedes content. How do we think about aligning our brands and places in ways that are different and unexpected? And we did a collaboration with Late Checkout, which is a fashion, like a 90s streetwear brand out of Madrid. And that happened to be the #1 piece of content in all of Marriott International for the entire year. We aligned ourselves with Josh Hutcherson, PETA from the Hunger Games, which, was sort of interesting. He just said, I love the brand. I want to do that. And we think about like how he kind of transcends generations, like the millennials to, teens. And so I think it's kind of finding things that maybe are a bit surprising, not pandering, but that are actively, trying to engage and sort of create maybe that awareness and that affinity.
Carlina, any thoughts you have?
Just to your point, I emphasize partnerships. I mean, obviously, you look at your media buy, you look at your digital performance strategy, but like for us, partnerships, we did a huge collaboration with Hypebeast and brought in a complete new audience, had the media buy behind it. So just as an example, so that's really how we target different and multiple audiences.
Carlos, you want to bring us home?
I can hear the music to finish, but I think that at the end of the day, we cannot ignore that we have to figure out multiple generations, to your point, which makes it really hard. The transfer of wealth that is gonna happen, it's massive, and it's gonna be towards a more older consumer that's gonna have a lot of disposable income, which will benefit your reserve business very well.
So we better get our safari tickets soon.
Yeah, before. But also, the Gen Z generation, definitely likes luxury, right? But financially, when you look across generations, they're not moving as fast as other generations, financially speaking. So they might be, like, we should not ignore the older consumer because we will need their purchasing power to complement the journey of the Zs.
Just a random thought. I actually think the most magic I've seen in our marketing is when we're bringing all those generations together. Mm-hmm. Like that's when the magic happens. And I'm not going to speak for Jamie, but I'm going to speak for Jamie for a hot second. It was also true at Ritz-Carlton. And like I think like we did a big activation earlier this summer. I don't know if any of you were around Canal Street, but we opened a jewel box store on Canal Street where we would never sell a single product because it was all inauthentic. And it was a stance we took against the sale of inauthentic goods. And the fascinating thing about that was there was a ton of social virality around it. But more fascinating was we actually had a camera where we could sort of just like see what was happening for security purposes, actually. But we ended up somehow watching it one day, and it was the number of times a younger person was taking a parent or a grandparent in front of that window and explaining to them what was happening. And that's a really cool moment, like, and to me, like it really stuck out. And I was like, this wasn't designed, this wasn't planned, like this is not how we thought about that. And it was a great moment because it actually used our brand to create an intersection between these generations. And like, think about how many times you've explained something to like your child or your grandmother or your mom or whatever that might be. And like that brand helped create a connection for you guys. And so that was kind of cool. And I think that that's sort of an opportunity in how do you hit all these people when your media dollars are tight.
That's powerful. Well, great way to end the night. I just want to say again, Carlos, Caroline, Jamie, Carlina, what an incredible panel, folks. I hope you took a lot away from this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And they'll be around to mingle. So thank you all. Thanks for coming out.